Coming up on this Friday edition of Daybreak, addressing Asian and European leaders in Italy, President Park Geun-hye unveils her ambitious plan to boost tangible connections between the two continents and bring North Korea out of its international isolation. North Korea blasts South Korea for snubbing its suggestions on how to ease military tensions, accusing Seoul of jeopardizing highly anticipated high-level political talks between the two sides. Plus, the World Health Organization says the number of recorded deaths from Ebola is set to reach 4,500, with double that figure infected. Daybreak begins now. Hello, and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Friday, October 17th. Here in Seoul, I'm Mark Broome, and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We start with President Park's trip to Italy, and the Korean leader has laid out her extremely ambitious vision for developing transportation, technology and even education links between Asia and Europe. Speaking at the 10th Summit of Asia-Europe meeting in Milan, the president also promoted her so-called Eurasia initiative that's aimed at helping North Korea become a more responsible member of the international community. Our Choi-sun, who is travelling with the president, filed this report.
Addressing some 50 world leaders at the Asia-Europe meeting in Milan Thursday, the Korean president first talked about enhancing the physical link between the two continents. She proposed a global symposium to discuss a rail, land, sea and air transportation and distribution network system across Eurasia. President Park then talked about a digital link, vowing to expand from the Korea-led Trans-Eurasia Information Network, a high-speed connectivity of research and education institutes in more than 50 countries. Lastly, the Korean leader highlighted connecting the two continents' culture and education to increase mutual understanding and to build trust, ultimately solidifying the basis of worldly peace. In that regard, President Park referred to her Eurasia initiative of linking the region, including North Korea, for growth, innovation and peace. She said both Asia and Europe should strengthen efforts in persuading the North to open its doors to the world and change, and that a nuclear-free and peaceful unified peninsula would then become a strong nexus for Eurasia. As the two continents seek to boost cooperation on world issues, the Korean president announced Seoul will step up its part in the global fight against the Ebola outbreak by sending health personnel to the affected regions in West Africa. On day 2 of the summit, President Park will have an opportunity to speak about issues concerning the Korean peninsula and Korea's contributions to the future of ASEM. Choi-sun, Arirang News, Milan.
North Korea has lashed out at South Korea for snubbing its suggestions on ways to improve inter-Korean ties after a handful of military altercations at the border. The North Korean Central News Agency reported on Thursday that North Korean officials' proposals about stopping vessels crossing the sensitive maritime border and preventing the flying of anti-Pyongyang leaflets fell on completely deaf ears during their talks earlier this week. The lengthy report also accused the South of failing to make any effort to understand its sincerity. South Korea's defense ministry has already admitted Wednesday's meeting went nowhere, as the two sides couldn't reach any common ground. Earlier this week, Seoul suggested holding the second round of political talks on October 30th, but the North has yet to respond to that proposal. North Korea sees the opportunity to promote its efforts to solve the country's food shortages on UN World Food Day. Pyongyang's state-run newspaper on Thursday called for self-sufficiency in food, saying the problem would never be solved if it puts expectations upon others. It added the North was increasing its agricultural investments and carrying out new measures to improve production at farms. Now, North Korea has not received rice or any food aid from North Korea for a few years now. The UN says more than a quarter of all North Korean children are stunted due to chronic malnutrition. South Korea and the United States will hold a joint foreign and defense ministers meeting next week on the sidelines of their annual security consultative meeting in Washington. Diplomatic sources say the decision to hold the meeting was made back in April during talks in Seoul, this between President Park Geun-hye and her US counterpart Barack Obama, as well as John Kerry and South Korea's foreign minister. Both countries will discuss the timing of the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul, as well as their combined defense capability against North Korea. The OPCON transfer is scheduled to take place in late 2015, but both sides are thought to have reached consensus on pushing the date back several years, considering North Korea's ongoing nuclear missile threats. The official agenda, however, will not include discussions on deploying a US missile defense system known as THAAD to the Korean peninsula. Now, in economic news, and concerns over Korea's shaky recovery continue to grow as even exporters who have sustained the domestic economy during its most difficult times in the recent past are now struggling as well, and this is due to the persistently weak economic conditions in the Eurozone. Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Sluggish domestic consumption and investment in Korea have caused headaches for the nation's economic policymakers, but concerns over exports are about to turn them into full-blown migraines. Facing a slump in Eurozone economies, the central bank projects slowing growth in exports, the country's traditional growth engine, down the road.
It's a fact that the Eurozone economy is in a bad state because exports take up half of Korea's GDP. The global economy will, of course, have a massive impact on the domestic economy.
And the situation at home is not much better. Korea's facility investment in August dropped over 10% from the previous month, while overall industrial output sank 0.6%. In the face of such gloomy data, the central bank has lowered its key interest rate to a record low 2%. But experts say that will only provide a short-term boost in spurring investment, and that building a business-friendly environment is more critical.
Although local companies investing in overseas markets is inevitable, the government should work on improving business conditions to bring at least some of those investments back home.
Experts add that private consumption will only see a boost with the introduction of structural reforms that solve the mounting household debt problem and aging population. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Now, a new survey has found that nearly half of Koreans who work full-time are so-called mobile workers. The poll by Microsoft Korea shows 45% of people who work more than 30 hours a week do not limit their work time to the office, but do their tasks on the move as well. Almost 95% of respondents say they own mobile devices such as smartphones, tablet PCs or notebooks. 4 out of 10 carry their notebooks and tablet PCs around at the same time, and most of them use their notebooks for working and tablet PCs for leisure. Pope Francis made a huge impression when he made a historic visit to Korea back in August, and it was his mode of transportation, a humble Kia Seoul, that garnered extra special attention. Kia Motors says the Pope's decision to use the car triggered an avalanche of interest in the model. Sales in Europe topped 1,600 in September. That's up almost 120% from the previous month. And in Italy, sales of the Seoul jumped 150% last month. Since being rolled out 6 years ago, global sales of Kia's Seoul are expected to surpass 1 million this month. Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following on this last day of the work week, Friday here in Seoul. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by the news center. Hello, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. 4 more people in Spain are under observation for an Ebola infection this morning. As the World Health Organization announced Thursday, the worldwide death toll would surpass 4,500 this week. At Madrid's airport, a passenger traveling from Nigeria via Paris was transported away by an ambulance when he showed symptoms of a fever. All other passengers on the Air France flight were allowed to disembark, though the plane was isolated for disinfection. Also being tested for Ebola are a missionary and a Red Cross worker who had recently returned from West Africa, and a person who had come into contact with infected Spanish nursing assistant Teresa Romero before she was hospitalized early last week. This as the World Health Organization is preparing a checklist of standards and practices that all countries should follow. It also identified 14 African countries where preparedness and containment of Ebola is a priority to prevent its spread. In the midst of violent clashes reviving between protesters and police in Hong Kong this week, the city's embattled leader has said he's ready to restart talks with student leaders as early as next week. But CY Leung also said he's in no position to offer concessions to the students' demands for fully free elections in the financial hub, saying that Beijing is unwilling to compromise. He said the best thing the Hong Kong government could offer was a discussion on reaching a solution within the framework of the decision of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. Search and rescue operations continue in Nepal after a surprise blizzard hit the Himalayas during the country's peak climbing season. At least 28 trekkers are now reported to have died, most of them on the popular Annapurna circuit. Trekkers from Israel, Canada, India, Poland, Slovakia, and Nepal were among those killed. Search teams have rescued some 220 people, with many others still missing. The severe rain and snow appear to have been triggered by the remnants of Cyclone Hudhud that had wreaked havoc in India last week. And finally, Apple CEO Tim Cook has announced a few new gadgets during a launch event in Cupertino, California this morning. Among those on offer are smaller iPads. Cook said the iPad Air 2 at 6.1 millimeters thick is the thinnest device of its kind on the market. It also upgraded its smaller tablet, the iPad Mini 3, which features a Touch ID fingerprint sensor like its bigger sibling, though it has a lower resolution rear camera and an older A7 processor. Apple also released an updated iMac and a new operating system. Apple Pay will be available starting Monday in the United States.
Well, we call it iPad 249.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, a joint emergency response exercise takes place every single year on Seoul's major Hangang River, but more emphasis was put on this year's as it came exactly 6 months after some 300 people, mostly high school students, died in the Seoul-ho ferry sinking. Helicopters, boats, fire trucks and rescue divers were dispatched to the scene, as you can see on the video there, of a staged collision between 2 ferries, this on Thursday. Officials say it was the largest joint response exercise in 17 years. The main focus of the exercise was to save lives and was supposed to be completed in 21 minutes, but it took just 17. Around 1,000 people from 33 different organizations took part in the 1-hour drill. Private boat companies were included for the first time as well. Now, the world's largest telecommunications conference, the ITU meeting, is set to kick off in Korea's southeastern city of Busan next Monday. As the host nation, Korean IT companies are seizing the chance to show off their latest gadgets and technologies to the rest of the world. Our Song Ji-son reports.
During the 3-week ITU Plenipotentiary Conference, a handful of related conventions will be held at the Busan Exhibition and Convention Center, ranging in topics from health ICT to big data. They will all provide a glimpse into the future. The 5th-generation mobile network will be at the heart of all the state-of-the-art telecom technologies to be exhibited during the ITU conference period. The mobile technology enables users to download a high-definition movie in just 1 second. Samsung Electronics on Wednesday succeeded in establishing a data transfer environment of 1.2 gigabytes per second inside an automobile running at 100 kilometers per hour. Korea's 3 major mobile carriers, SK Telecom, KT and LG U+, will unveil their latest technologies at the World IT Show, kicking off with the ITU conference. SK Telecom aims to become the world's leading provider of 5G technology, which is often referred to as being beyond 2020 mobile communications technologies. For the exhibition, SKT will be transferring its mobile team to the port city, which will allow people to experience a smart home environment connected through the Internet of Things. KT will set up a ubiquitous zone to display its smart energy, healthcare, and integrated security systems. On the sidelines of the main conference, the CEOs of Korea's leading ICT companies will also share their insights and unveil their visions for the future. The speakers will include the chiefs of internet portals Naver and Tom Kakao, and KT President Hwang Chang-yu will give a keynote speech on the creative economy and Gigatopia on the 27th of October at the Global ICT Premier Forum. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, representatives from around 150 countries meeting in Korea's eastern city of Pyeongchang have adopted a declaration on biological diversity that summarizes the objectives that were reached during this 3-week-long event. Al Gwon-soa reports.
The Gangwon Declaration, which summarizes initiatives and suggestions made during this year's UN Convention on Biodiversity, was adopted on Thursday. High-level officials at the 2-day meeting aimed to assess and adjust previously set goals to come up with sustainable measures to preserve biodiversity across the globe. The declaration includes the so-called Pyeongchang Roadmap that has been reorganized to be more attainable. It includes plans to enhance technical and scientific cooperation, as well as increasing financial resources. This year's convention is a midterm review of the implementation of a strategic plan for biodiversity to protect some 1.5 million species on Earth. Representatives from scores of countries gathered at the conference and agreed that the global community has fallen short of achieving goals that were to be completed by 2020. One of the problems is a lack of financial resources. Currently, less than 20% of necessary funds for maintaining biodiversity have been pledged. Korea is expected to double its development assistance in the area of biodiversity by 2015 and take on a bigger role in bridging the gap between developed and developing nations. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the Incheon Asian Games, which ended earlier this month. Now, just as South Korea promised, the government is set to pay a portion of North Korea's Asian Games bill, with North Korea's total Asia bill coming out to roughly 750 million won, or $708,000. The South Korea Unification Ministry stated that it will pay the remaining 550 million won, or roughly $517,000. Park Soo-jin, the spokesperson for the ministry, stated that the money will be taken from the government's fund for inter-Korean exchanges, as most of the fees were broadcast and transportation-related costs. Meanwhile, the North paid 200 million won, or roughly $188,000 using US dollars for the food and accommodation at the Athletes Village. And shifting over to the LPGA KEB Hana Bank Championship, which is currently taking place here in the nation. And after the first round, a surprise leader as South Korea's Kang Hae-ji took the lead after the first day. The 23-year-old finishes off the first day of the event with 6 birdies and a bogey and shoots a 5 under par, taking a two-stroke lead over 5 other golfers. Meanwhile, Park Geun-hye, who struggled a bit with 3 bogeys on the day, would finish tied for 15th at 1 under par, with teenage sensation Kim Hyo-ju tied for 21st at even par. And now moving over to some Thursday night's KBL action, the Ulsan Mobis Phoebus hang on to beat the Seoul SK Knights 74-64, while Cheonju KCC Aegis took on Incheon AT-Line Elephants. So let's take a look at the highlights. Now a tight game from the start as Incheon takes a 21-20 lead before KCC rallies back to take a 47-40 lead going into halftime. But a big game from Chung Young-sam and Ricardo Powell as the two combined for 50 points in the game as Incheon rallies back in the second half to take this game 89-84. Well, this time over to Thursday night's KBO action, with Samsung Lions benching most of their starters. They lose to the Kia Tigers 7-5, but a must-win game for the SK Wyverns as they faced off against the Tusan Bears in Seoul. And going into the game here, bottom of the first inning, Kim Hyun-soo, that's an RBI ground out to first base as Tusan takes an early 1-0 lead. Third inning, more from Tusan, this time Kim Jin-hyung infield single scores Chung Soo-bin before Kim Hyun-soo singles home on another for a 3-0 lead. But not done yet, Hong Sung-in this time, this one a 6-4-3 double play, but the runner scores from third and SK in trouble, trailing 4-0 after 3 innings. But SK bats come alive, scoring a run in the 5th inning before tying it up with 4 runs in the 6th as this game goes to extra innings. Now SK Wyverns would score twice in the 10th inning, keeping their hopes alive, but Tusan threatens in the bottom of the inning with the bases loaded and no outs. But SK manages to hold on and win 7-5 as the final playoff spot comes down to the final game. And now finishing things off with more baseball news, but over to the majors, where the Kansas City Royals have advanced to the World Series for the first time in 29 years. Now the Kansas City Royals, who went from barely making the playoffs to going undefeated in the postseason so far, beat the Baltimore Orioles 2-1 in Game 4 to sweep the American League Championship Series. The Royals, meanwhile, will face off against the winner of the San Francisco Giants St. Louis Cardinals series, with the Giants up 3-1 in the NLCS. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-yeon here with your latest weather updates. It's another chilliest morning of the season that we are waking up to. Temperatures plummet overnight and current temperatures in Seoul is at about 8 degrees Celsius and winds are making it feel colder than actual numbers. So be sure to dress warmly before heading out today. And there will be nothing but sunshine throughout the day across the nation, and afternoon highs are expected to be similar to a bit warmer than yesterday, hovering in the 20 marks. So with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now the low in Seoul kicked off at 8 this morning. Then the daytime highs in Seoul will be reaching to 20, and Daegu and Busan will hike up to 21, and Gwangju will peak at 22 this afternoon under lots of sunshine. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will see highs of 20, and Dokdo peaks at 18, and Mount Keungang will only make it to 9 this afternoon. But please beware of big temperature gaps between lows and highs and dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, and it's time to take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it from us for now. Korea Today is coming up in 30 minutes' time. Have a great day, a fabulous weekend. Thanks ever so much for watching, and we'll see you later.